Hey there darlings, welcome back to the Farmer's Table. I'm glad to be making a video for this channel. It's been a minute, but we are back in full bore cooking season. I think I'm going to be wearing my apron for the better part of the next 2 months, and I love that. I love this time of year and how the kitchen becomes the heart of the home. Today I want to talk to you a little bit about cooking with whole pumpkins, specifically cooking with decorative pumpkins, but what I'm saying and what I'm going to show you applies to any pumpkin that you may have. I just think it is a silly thing that in our culture, it is very common. You know, you see decorative pumpkins like this in front of grocery stores all through, you know, September and October and even the beginning of November. And I see people stacking these up on their front porch, on their steps, used in their decor. And then so often what people do is they go toss these in the trash and 2 weeks later go buy lots of canned pumpkin to make their holiday pumpkin spice goodies. And that is so unnecessary. These are food. They were food first. The reason we decorate with pumpkins in the first place is a nod to harvest time when larders were full of storage things like storage squashes, winter squashes, which is what a pumpkin is. That's why we're even putting them on the front porch to begin with, because it is a quintessential fall image to have a full larder at the end of the growing season. One reason why a lot of people think that they cannot use decorative pumpkins is because they assume they're not food safe. Obviously, they're not grown organically. They are not grown organically. That is true, but they are grown according to conventional standards for growing squash. So it's not any different than buying like a summer squash at the grocery store that's not grown organically. They're probably grown very similarly. And of course, if you're a purist on eating organic food, you may not want to cook with decorative pumpkins. You can always buy organic pie pumpkins. But if you're going to throw these away and then go buy conventionally grown canned pumpkin, it is literally the same thing. So let's look at these today, and let's talk about a few things that we can do with whole pumpkins. So right here I've got 3 different varieties of pumpkin. I actually bought these for this video. I bought decorative pumpkins, which felt really silly considering I have like hundreds of pounds of pumpkins in my garden. But I wanted to really address the fact that you don't have to have a specific eating pumpkin in order to eat it. The ones I'm growing in my garden are great for eating, but a lot of pumpkins are good for eating. However, different varieties of fruits have different traits. So a lot of the pumpkins that we have more classically known as eating pumpkins, like a good example would be like a sugar pie pumpkin, which is the small orange pie pumpkins that are often sold for eating at grocery stores. Those were developed to kind of have sweeter flavor, have nicer flesh for whatever reason. So you may cut into a decorative pumpkin and it might not be your most favorite for all purposes. You may find one type of pumpkin that you think is really great for roasting and prefer it, and that's completely okay. I just think that if you're making puree, especially if you're going to be making pumpkin pies, if you're going to add it to other flavors, especially sugar, you don't necessarily need the absolute best flesh. So we're going to try these. I think what we'll probably find is that they're all pretty good. Okay, I'm jumping around a little bit. One thing about cooking with decorative pumpkins that are not being specifically sold for food, but even some that are being sold for food, sometimes they are sprayed with a coating much like much produce that is conventionally available, that's prolongs the shelf life. A lot of times you can feel if they have kind of a waxy surface, but you just want to start with washing your pumpkins down really good, and if they feel kind of waxy to you, put a little lemon juice, and that acid will help break down any coating that's on the outside. You're going to want to wash them anyway if they've been sitting on your front porch as decor, but even if you bought the pumpkin that was specifically marketed for eating, it's still a good practice to just go ahead and wash it down with like a diluted lemon juice water mix, or you could do vinegar too. You just want some acid in it to break down whatever may be built up on the outside. First, start with a sharp knife. You can really hurt yourself trying to cut a pumpkin with a dull knife. So right here we have a white variety, as you can see. This one has a really bright fragrance. I bet it tastes really good. All right, this one was difficult to get open. There we have the inside of it. This one smells completely different. This is significantly less sweet smelling, so I'm curious how this one's gonna cook up. Now for this big dude. One year, early on in my YouTube days, I had a really bad year with pumpkins and I didn't get any. And someone saw me talk about that on my channel, and they actually said, hey, I've got some I'd love to share with you, and brought me these. I mean, they were probably easily 40 pounds each. And I remember getting so frustrated trying to cut those because they were so big. And I was like genuinely concerned that I was gonna like hurt myself trying to get into them. And it ended up just taking them out on the concrete patio and just throwing them down on the ground until they busted open. I mean, sometimes you just gotta do what works. All right, let's take a look. Nice. This is so much pumpkin. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the quality of the pumpkins and how important that is. So see how this has a little bit of a bruise up here? I'm gonna cut that away. You wanna make sure when you're cooking with any pumpkin that it's in good shape. So if it has a bunch of like soft spots, rotten spots, if it's falling in anywhere, you may be able to cut it open and see like here, this is just one small bruise and the rest is okay. So I can just cut that away and I still have good firm fruit. But if it is like starting to fall in on itself, if it is rotten, you don't want to use that for cooking because you just don't know the bacteria that could be involved. Same thing for if you carved the pumpkin already, if you had a jack-o'-lantern. This video is going up in the middle of November, so likely you're not hanging on to any jack-o'-lanterns. But for future purposes, once it has been carved and set out, you don't need to eat it. It's just like any other food. If you cut it open and leave it sitting out for several days, it's not safe to eat because potential bacteria. I currently have my oven preheating to 350. We are first going to roast some of these pumpkins to make puree. And then I'm going to bump the heat up and we're going to cube and roast some of them as you would just a side dish for dinner. The first thing we need to do is scoop all the guts out of these pumpkins. We've got all the seeds and stuff holding them in. These pumpkin seeds are also food. If you want to roast them, if you like roasted pumpkin seeds, just lay out a layer on a roasting sheet. You know, cover them with a little oil, whatever seasoning you want. I just like them plain with salt, but you can add paprika and garlic powder, or you can go sweet with, you know, cinnamon and nutmeg. And then bake them in like a 400-degree oven or so for 45 minutes, stirring them a few times till they're good and dried out. All of my like lazy cook shortcuts came because of trying it once and realizing that it was fine. I used to like oil this, try to poke a bunch of holes in it, try to roast them. Now I just pile it up on a sheet. I typically do skin up, cut side down, and then I'm gonna roast it for about an hour. At that point I'll test for doneness. The flesh should be tender. If it still feels kind of firm, you just put it back in for another 10 or 15 minutes. While the big chunks of pumpkin finish roasting in the oven, I'm going to prepare a tray of small chunks of pumpkin to roast next. So for this, I like to cut my pumpkin into kind of a manageable slice. And depending on the skin of the pumpkin, if it's thin enough and it's not crazy bumpy, I just use a peeler and peel the skin off. If you have a very thick skinned pumpkin, or in the case of like this guy, definitely very ribbed and bumpy, it may make more sense to use a knife to cut the skin away. So now I just want to cut this into bite-sized pieces, kind of like you would if you were going to roast potatoes or sweet potatoes. Keep them fairly uniform so that they all roast evenly. Alright, timer just went off. Here's my pan of pumpkins. They look pretty done, but if you're easily able to pierce your knife in on the outside, they're cooked enough throughout. Alright, starting on the next pumpkin type, this is the one with the really warty skin, so I'm gonna lose a little bit more, but this will just be easier. That flesh that's really close to the edge of the skin typically is tougher and doesn't taste as good anyway, so I don't mind cutting a little bit of that away. In this case. So here is this pumpkin. I can already tell you, you know, one of the things they talk about with cooking decorative pumpkins is because they're not bred for flavor. Sometimes it's lacking. I think this is going to be much more squashy, like what we would typically associate with something like an acorn squash, rather than the sweetness of a pumpkin just by smelling it, which is fine. It's still food and still edible. So when I roast pumpkin, I'll take it one of two directions. We'll go savory or sweet. You can toss it in oil and then do salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, you know, add chili flakes or cayenne pepper, paprika, and these are going to be a more savory application. If you're dealing with a bland squash, you may want to just season it a little heavier. But there's also the sweet application, and I think that may be what I do with these today. Do oil first, and I'm going to toss it around on here. You could do this in a separate bowl. It would probably be more thorough, but then you'd have to wash the bowl. Now we're going to do some ground cinnamon, dried thyme. This is really kind of sweet and savory. You could just do the cinnamon and leave the herbs out. I think I'll also put a little bit of paprika. I love these flavors together. And then finally, salt. Pretty heavy dusting of good salt. Now, I'm going to start these roasting. I've bumped the heat up to 400 degrees. And once they're starting to get pretty soft, I am going to take them out and drizzle them with maple syrup and put them back in. The reason I don't want to put the maple syrup on the front end is because in the amount of time that it takes to actually roast these pumpkin bites, that maple syrup would have heavily caramelized to my pan, and then I'm risking it burning, and then you've got a bitter taste. At the very least, you have a pan that's a booger to clean. So I like to add that in on the end. I'm actually gonna put just a little drizzle. These could use a little more oil, and I remembered I had some duck fat here, and duck fat makes things roast so crispy and delicious. So I'm gonna add that. 400 degree oven, probably 30 minutes or so. All right, now back over to my roasted pumpkins. These are still pretty hot, so I'm gonna be careful, but I wanna flip them over. And I'm just really curious, so I'm going to give these a taste. They're extremely hot. So this one I told you guys didn't smell very sweet. The texture of the flesh is really nice. It's like super smooth. But it does not smell like sweet at all. So this is like a very squash flavor. It tastes like butternut squash. It's really good, actually. It's sweeter than I was expecting it to be. All right, let's try the big orange one. The reason I want to taste these before I decide exactly what I'm going to do with them is obviously I want to be familiar with the ingredients I'm making things with. So things that I could do with pumpkin puree. You could make pumpkin pies, obviously. Any sort of pumpkin dessert, pancakes, muffins, pumpkin bread, anything like that where you would normally open a can of pureed pumpkin, right here has got you covered. But I recognize some may have a better flavor than others. That's pretty solid. Honestly, that tastes fairly similar to the pumpkins I grow for eating. I'm very curious about the white one. I'm thinking it would be cool to take just all the white pumpkin puree and make like white pumpkin pies for the novelty of it, because people always like when things are different than they're used to, or they hate it. That's also an option. Here I was in the beginning talking about how this one was the sweetest smelling. It's actually the most bland. It's okay. It's got an okay pumpkin flavor. It's just not super strong. So that actually would make this a great candidate to me for pumpkin pie, because it's going to have all the texture of the pumpkin pie. It's going to have the underlying flavor, but since I'm going to be adding, you know, sugar, brown sugar, I'm going to be adding all of the seasonings. That one would be good. This one would be great. They may be great to mix. I wouldn't get the white pumpkin pie. This one, however, though, that's very butternut squash tasting, I'm thinking that this puree would be really good for soups. I love a good pureed pumpkin soup. It is just the taste of fall and the taste of getting your wisdom teeth out, because that's all I ate after I got mine out. That's hilarious. Before this started, I would have told you I was anticipating this being my least favorite, and I think it's actually my most. The lesson of the story is they're all edible. They're all good. So what I like to do whenever I am roasting pumpkins for puree, you don't can pumpkin puree. It's one of the things they tell you not to do. It's because the temperatures inside packed jars of solid purees, it can be hard to determine whether the temperature at the very center of the jar is reaching the safe temps. So you're supposed to can pumpkin in cubes. If you'd like to see that, I could totally do a video of that as well. But I like to just freeze it, and what I'll do is once it's cool enough to handle, which it's nowhere near that now, I will just scrape this out just like this and take all of the puree that I scrape out and I measure it into 1 cup measurements and put it in freezable containers or freezer bags. I like to just have them frozen already measured, and that way if I'm looking at a recipe and let's say I want to make pumpkin pancakes, I can pull one of those freezer bags out that's frozen flat and defrost it in some warm water, or just let it sit on the counter or stick it in the fridge the night before, and I've already got my pumpkin measured out. This is so hot it's steaming up the camera, but as you can see, I mean, it is just a lovely mash at this point, and though it's really too hot to handle, once it's cool it'll be very easy to scrape this out, measure it, freeze it. Okay, so I just pulled these out. I'm going to drizzle with the maple. I just wanted you guys to kind of see that. Normally I wouldn't even take them out for this. I would just do this standing in the door of the oven. I probably do just like a couple of tablespoons of maple across a pan like this. If you want just a hint of sweet, you could do less. And if you want more, I won't judge you. It's maple syrup. Come on. It's amazing. But yeah, these are very cooked. Might even could have gone a little bit less. But they're going to be good. Okay. 5 more minutes with sweet on. Okay, just 5 minutes later, you see how that just in 5 minutes, that maple syrup got really syrupy. It's just perfect now, but had it cooked for the entire time, it would have been, you know, burnt and not great. Now, what do we do with roasted pumpkin like this? I mean, one option is to just eat it. It's just good, just like this. This is really good in grain bowls. If you've ever seen any sort of like grain bowl recipe, roasted pumpkin is a great addition to things like that. I really love to like roast a chicken and serve it with roast pumpkin because the flavors really go well together. You can get a bite of chicken with a bite of pumpkin. And another way that I really like this, and it's going to be really strange to some people, it's definitely more of a Mediterranean idea, but to get plain yogurt or plain Greek yogurt and put like a scoop of the roasted pumpkin on top of the yogurt, and then you can drizzle with a little bit more maple or honey or just some good olive oil, and if you need just a little more salt on top. It's so good. I love that. This is one of my favorite things. Man, that's good. Let's try the white pumpkin roasted. That first one was the one that I said tastes a lot like the pumpkins I grow. I have no idea what the names of these varieties are because I just bought them at the store. Okay, so the white pumpkin is way better this way. Just the puree was so bland. That makes me feel a lot better about using that puree as a pie and stuff like that. It's going to do well when it has some seasoning. And back here on the corner, I kept separate some of the squashy pieces. They're all squash. I'm calling it a squashy, but they're all squash. I saw a thing once, it was like a scandalized meme where people were like, some canned pumpkin is actually squash. And I'm like, all canned pumpkin is squash. Dang, that's good. Y'all need to make this. Y'all make this and tell me what you think, just as we did it. Cinnamon, thyme, some paprika and salt. Roast it, last 5 minutes, drizzle of maple. Yes, do it. Oh, I just got one bite that was like crispy on the edge. That is so good. So obviously, you don't have to use a decorative pumpkin to cook with a whole pumpkin. You can buy them for food. Maybe you grow them in your garden. But cooking from whole pumpkins versus purchasing already prepared like pumpkin puree, while that may be great in a pinch and it is definitely faster, this is way more economical. You get so much more for your money, and I think that it really can be even better flavor. And I really do hope you will roast some pumpkin like that and tell me what you think, because it's so good. Thank y'all for hanging out with me today and all the days you do. I bless you. Until next time.